You're welcome. Let's get it going. The ReThink podcast is back at you with a special guest today. Will we all rise? We have in our presence the newly anointed,
Yes,
the christened one,
Yes.
the knighted.
That's right.
Dr. Rob Shope.
So this counts. No, I don't know what that is.
This goes on the internet, so be careful.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, so that's a normal thing that we do.
Yeah,
there,
it is here too.
Yeah.
So we're glad to have you, Rob.
Thank you. Thanks
Tell us a little bit briefly. I don't want a whole lot. I don't want a PhD dissertation on why you chose to get a PhD, but why did you do this?
Well, I was connected really to Christ Church in a lot of ways through relationship with you guys, but we spent several years in the mission field, and most recently in Haiti. And while I was there, just looking at the lack of leadership success based upon not really understanding cross-cultural ministry. And so the premise of the degree was about being a successful leader in a cross-cultural environment, bringing about, member unity and that type of a thing. So
wow,
really out of a place of experience.
Sounds pretty deep.
In reality, he just couldn't let it go that I was a doctor and he was.
Yeah.
I don't think he cared.
In reality, we won't say it for everybody to know, but how much of your dissertation did I write?
Rob definitely gave a lot of insight.
Yeah.
You
guys had a relationship for a long time, though, right?
Yeah.
He was your...
Yeah, so I met him when I was in high school,
Yeah.
and he had just come back from Spain,
Mm-hmm.
from the mission field in Spain.
Yeah.
So
Spain and Haiti.
Yeah, Morocco, Spain and Morocco, kind of the thing. We lived in Spain. I planted churches with Muslims in Morocco and in southern Spain as well. But yeah, I was, really great friends with Andrew's youth minister at the time, and you were probably 15, still playing in Reflector. And back in the old days. And Mandy was also, your wife, was in the youth group
They weren't married when he was 15.
No. I don't know if she really wanted much to do with him
No,
when
not a
he
whole
was
lot.
15. So, yeah, I've known Andrew for a long, long time. So.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Now you are where?
In Bloomington Normal, Illinois. We came back from the mission field in 2018, and I'm currently the executive director at Little Galley Christian Camp in Clinton.
Yeah, so for folks around this area, Oil Belt, similar type of thing.
Yeah, Oil Belt, really familiar with Oil Belt. I was on the board at Oil Belt when I was in ministry in between Spain and Haiti in Albion, Illinois, at the Little Prairie Christian Church for 6-ish years. And so Oil Belt's great. Tyler's an awesome guy, good friend of mine as well.
That's debatable, but hey.
Well, yeah.
You mean the latter daddy?
That's another discussion altogether.
Sure. Tyler, interestingly, when I was a dean of high school week, Tyler was one of my campers back then. So that just says how old I am. That's really all it does.
I've died to ask the story, but we just don't have time.
No.
I'd like to know the scene being played out on your arms.
Oh, yeah.
Is that a quick story? Is that... Okay, let's go on to something else.
Nothing is quick with Rob. So
It's imagery relating my relationship to the Lord, where the Holy Spirit descended in baptism to the waters of life. It's a phoenix, and a phoenix has to die before it can live. So it's that daily call to die to myself. I just did it really big and colorful.
You go big or go home.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's cool, but it's pretty big.
Cool.
Pretty big.
I bet.
It hurt. Yeah.
If you ask people a story, there's always a story.
Yeah, there's a story with all of them.
Sometimes a good one, sometimes not.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, all of just the ink I've got everywhere are between me and my faith in the Lord. And so church buildings have stained glass, and I guess that's what part of the body I am. I'm the decorative aspect. Yeah.
Before we jump into the content, Psalms 23 today, let's remind folks Easter, death is defeated. My card says.
It's got a cross on it.
Yeah.
We have a new life with Jesus.
Easter is coming up, and we're actually going to be in the end of Psalm 23, for part of our Easter message. And we got a lot of services, a lot of different opportunities for people. As I said in the last podcast, you don't have to come to all of them; they're all the same. In fact, you mess us up if you come to all of them. So for seating capacity wise, but I hope you take advantage of the opportunity to bring somebody with you. Last year when we did the early options, people would bring guests or friends or family members who didn't have a relationship with the Lord. They'd bring them for a service, and then they came back and worshiped in a different one themselves. That's a great idea. Multiple opportunities. What are the times, Matt? What are we?
Friday at 7, Saturday at 7. Actually, I guess Fridays we've got a 7 o'clock service at Clay County and Effingham. Saturday at 7 here, and then services match up in Clay County and Effingham at 9 and 10:30 on Sunday.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part, though, has been 2 Sundays ago, Blumker mentioned that we were going to be meeting in person for Easter.
Yeah.
This place erupted.
I was gonna say people got pretty wound up.
I mean, my parents were here, and they could not believe it was like a standing ovation.
It was. I didn't expect it.
It was cool.
People were excited.
It's exciting.
And the reason is because we are now in the territory of we did COVID a year ago. I mean, we're there. This is when we started canceling everything.
March 16th was the day.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool this Easter. We're going to, I don't know if you want to say this on the podcast, but we're going to take communion a little bit different.
I didn't really want to say that, but
Perfect. Well,
it's not different for us.
Just never
but
mind.
We're going to allow the opportunity for going back to taking communion like we used to, not just the peel and eat. Those will be available for people that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a special moment for sure.
It's going to be really cool. I want to share some personal things. I'm wrestling with the emotions of all that right now. With my father passed away this past October, and I've got their kitchen table. It's actually purchased for my second oldest son, but I still got a hold of it because he lives in Denver, and I'm just thinking about the table reference and the invitation of Jesus to come to his table, and all the things that I remember around that table, all the relationships and all the discipleship. My mom and dad wouldn't have called it that, but all the discipleship that transpired around that table.
Yeah.
And so, excited. Going to be good stuff. Anyway, that's Easter. Psalm 23.
Yeah.
So we had Rob speaking here at the Effingham campus this weekend, and we gave him verse 3, which is.
You make me remember.
Can you quote it?
He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake.
He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. When you first received that's the text for the day, what was your response?
Yeah, I was like, thanks a lot, Jeff. Because,
What, 8 words, 9 words?
Yeah. So it's like, but you look at it, it's like, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. So it's like you can go off the good shepherd idea, and it's easy tie in back to Jesus, and the idea of wanting what he wants, and he provides. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Well, again, that's vivid imagery, and wherever that pasture. I tend to be, like we already said, as a missionary, I'm kind of an end of the earth type of a person, and so my mind goes to everything from sandy beaches to mountaintops to wherever it may be. That's he makes me lie down there. And then I read he leads me in paths of righteousness, and I was like, path, it's a dirty little walkway, like what in the world? But I quickly repented, after.
There's a lot of content here. You did you shared in the sermon about path up a mountain.
Yes.
Really awesome pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, great story. Climbing Mount Rainier.
Yeah, Mount Rainier in Washington State. It's just outside of
14,416
feet. But again, that 16 depends on the snowfall. And
what in the world was the motivation for that?
It was there. Yeah, we just could.
Hey, honey, watch this.
Since college, I had a group of buddies, and one in particular where about every other year we'd go into Canada. So we'd go up to Canada and we'd fish. So we started out staying at a fish camp. Well, that wasn't adventurous enough. So then we started staying in like out camps. Well, then that wasn't adventurous enough, and so on and so forth. We ended up in the last time we were in Canada, we ported canoes, all through, and we just basically had a backpack and whatever we took, that's our survival stuff. And so after we did that, we were all kind of like, okay, Canada's big, it's beautiful, let's do something. And my friend said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to climb a mountain. So I was thinking Colorado, I was thinking a 14er, a dry climb, and, we'd go up to whatever, Pikes Peak or, Flatirons
Where you
or
can
whatever.
drive.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, we're climbing Mount Rainier, and come to find out, Rainier is it's an obligatory summit, 3 summits for those that want to attempt Everest, because everything that you're going to find on Mount Everest, you find on Mount Rainier.
Wow.
Except the oxygen depletion.
Well, you can still get altitude sickness. In fact, one of the guys that was in our group, he wasn't allowed to summit because at 10,000 foot base camp, he was suffering from altitude sickness. Normally on Rainier, you don't deal with it. You don't generally need to get oxygen. It would be kind of a waste of money because we did the whole thing from base to summit, back to base in 23 hours.
No, I went elk hunting at 8,000 feet.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
cans of oxygen you could buy at Cabela's.
Yeah, right.
That's a lifesaver.
Yeah, right.
He did say in the message, though,
Yeah.
for the record, he said there's no way Blunker could have climbed Mount Rainier. He didn't,
No, I did not.
make-
He could probably climb it with me on his back.
Probably.
Pretty
So-
challenging, though, right?
The most physically difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And I've done a lot of things.
My palms were sweating looking at the pictures.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's one thing to climb that narrow pathway,
Mm-hmm.
but it appeared like there were times when if you're off the right path,
Oh, you're dead.
literally,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that ladder picture you showed
Yeah.
where it's dark all the way around,
Oh, yeah.
that, man.
You slip and fall. I mean, really, you're tied into the person in front of you and behind you.
you all go down together.
You can.
Because
Yeah.
if you fall and I'm tied to you, you know what's going to happen?
Well,
We're going
both
down.
here's the deal. That's
You
why
have
you're
these-
tied together, though.
So you die together?
No, you don't die together. You don't.
It's really it's
a picture of
the
community.
idea of it. It really is. It's a picture of community because if
Sure, we
for
got
example, if I fall, if we're all tied together, I fall. We're all carrying an ice axe. So usually when someone falls, they make some blood curdling cry.
Yeah, you better believe it.
You
Scream like a girl.
The 3 of you feel the tension on the rope from the harness. The first thing you do is you drop to the ground, you bury your ice axe in, and you lay on that axe. So you create an anchor point. So I'm just dangling. And so then what happens is that the 3 of you together pull me back up.
Mhm.
If you
Wow.
fall into an open space, that's how that works.
That's intense.
So very, and when I fell, it was intense. Thankfully, like what had stopped me was the guy I was tied to in front of me. He actually slipped down and he dug in. Where I fell was very ashy. Rainier's a volcano, and so it was loose. So he was actually kind of dragging, and my feet hit a boulder, like right at the precipice of the crevasse. And that's why I always said, like, the Lord put my feet upon a rock. And in that moment, he literally saved my life. That would have been, my journey would have ended at 12,500 feet, So,
Wow.
but I got up, and it was funny because the guy brought me in, he grabbed my shirt, and my jacket's in my face, and he said, "You cannot fall here." And I said,
Well,
"It's
I
not
did."
like I tried, this isn't an end it all mission,
Yeah.
So I got back on, and from
Is that because the ground was soft? You just wasn't safe?
well, it's because everywhere around us, literally the path was on that precipice all the way around. I mean, and it was to the right. So if
well, where are you supposed to fall? On the flat bottom? I mean,
there's nowhere to fall. That's what he's saying. You do not fall. Stay on your feet the rest of this way. Because if you fall again, what you said
we're
before.
going to cut you loose.
Not only you are dead, but potentially all of us can die here. So it's really important. So I was totally like fixed on that path.
And that's a
like,
graphic picture of team and everything too. I
Mhm.
mean, sometimes you fall wrong.
oh yeah.
You're not just affecting you. You're
Yeah.
taking everybody out.
Yeah.
Consequences.
Yep.
Yeah. If you're in a position of leadership, I mean, the New Testament talks about that. If you're in a position of leadership, you have a higher level of accountability for that reason.
Right.
Mhm.
Because
Exactly.
people are going down with you.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's right.
Our sin is what is how you say it? It's personal, but it's never private.
Right.
Yeah. It's well, that's what you say about faith.
That's what I say
Right.
about
It's
our
It goes both
relationship.
ways.
Yeah.
But
It goes
yeah,
both
sin
ways.
is, yeah.
Yep.
Sin's destructive.
I said in the message as well. It's like our faith is a personal thing, but it's lived out in community.
So talking about paths,
Yeah.
I've been to a couple different mountains, not done Rainier, but
Mhm.
I've been on a mountain in New Zealand where there is no clear path.
Yeah.
And you talk about the extreme difficulty of trying to accomplish something without a clear path.
Right.
It's almost impossible, and it is exhausting. And without a really compelling why you want to complete something, I mean, people quit. And the group I was with, there was 3 of us that ended up going to the top because it got really hard. No clear path, no clear why. So when you look at like Psalm 23, you lead me on paths of righteousness for your name's sake.
Yeah.
And that's the anchor.
That's the anchor. That's the why. That's the thing that brings all of that together is how big God is and how incredible He is and what He desires for us and for His people.
How do you wrestle with the idea that for God to say everything is for my glory is not arrogant or prideful or selfish? You know, when God says, I created you to give me glory, that's not selfish. It would be for us, right? I mean, everything we do, that we seek our own glory in, that's self-centered, but not for God.
And again, I think it comes down to, like, if you look at who God is and how He's positioned stuff, if we look at God and we say, God is glorious, and what did He do through Jesus, right? He sent the glory of heaven to earth so that we would be a reflection of His glory. That's our identity, is we're a reflection of His glory. So what do we do then? Well, we emit God's glory. You know, the glory that we would sinfully take for ourselves is a glory that we put back onto God. And so I think it's important, you know, it's a great question, because when people ask about, you know, well, God seems like He's not very kind. You know, He seems like He's this and He seems like that. I think it comes from a place where we put ourselves at the center and God's a periphery. But when we put God at the center and we put us in the periphery, even though things are harder to grasp, they're easier to understand.
So when you were on your path, one of the pictures you showed was that of literally a path in the snow up the mountain. You said you were the lead person, or
no?
Okay,
I was tied into a guide ahead of me, and then the guy behind me had the camera on his head.
That's the perfect imagery for Psalm 23.
Yeah.
The shepherd in front of us leading us.
Yeah. It's like, again, like I said, the shepherd and the sheep. If we look at us as disciples, as a Christian, we are called to be a sheep from the front and a shepherd from the rear. So if I'm following the guide on the path, someone is following me. Like I essentially become their guide.
Yeah.
So, and if we look at Jesus as the good shepherd and we follow Him, and we follow others as they follow Him, other people are going to also follow us as we follow them, as they follow Him.
Yeah, I like that imagery when you said that. This, you know, from the front, I'm pursuing Jesus, and I've got to be a sheep. You know, totally submitting myself to His mission. I like that too. Submitting myself to His mission so He can lead me. But like Paul says in the New Testament, and that's what I thought of when he said that, follow me as I follow Christ.
Yes.
Somebody is being a sheep, not to follow me because I'm still the sheep, following Jesus, but to follow me from the back. I look like a shepherd, and we're all called to that, to go and make disciples. So that, you know, we're to be a shepherd for His sheep.
It's kind of cool. I had the opportunity to live in Spain and Haiti as well, but shepherding in Haiti and in Spain are much different. In Haiti, they tend to tie ropes around their necks and they drag them along, right?
Yeah, they only have 1 or 2 as well.
Right,
There's
exactly.
no big flocks.
Right, but in Spain, there are flocks of sheep, and so we got to, as a family, we went out to a sheep farmer, a shepherd's home, and his home, you know, paddock and everything, and we had paella, and it was fun. But it was really cool because he said, "Hang on, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get the sheep." And so he went out into the field, and they were just scattered in the field, and he just started to call, and pretty soon you see the sheep pick up, and they all start trotting. But as they come, the sheep were, you know, they were. What do? They bay. Donkeys bay. The sheep neigh. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
They start making noise. Well, the sheep that were up in the front weren't making noise. They were following. But then it was the sheep in the middle of the pack that were making the noise, because then the sheep at the end of the pack could follow that noise. So it's like as those sheep followed the shepherd, the other sheep followed the other sheep. It's pretty neat.
Huh.
Sheep don't see very well. They don't navigate well when they're by themselves. But if you put them in a group, they always follow each other. It's really interesting to see. It was an image that has always stuck with me.
So we're sheep following the shepherd, and there are other sheep following us.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make a little noise.
There you go.
Especially in this world, man. You know, the imagery of when we were doing 1 Corinthians 13, and you took out that symbol, and you just started banging it and talking about the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, I thought about that when you guys were talking, just the noise of our culture versus John 10, knowing the voice of our shepherd.
The voice.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know
Sometimes
his
it's
voice?
a still, quiet voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you got to be listening for it, because
Mm-hmm.
if you don't listen, you miss it, you know?
So when I did the How to Study the Bible class, which we just finished up here recently, and we did David Platt's curriculum from Secret Church, which was great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the literary tools he taught us to use when we're trying to understand the text better was a chiasm.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what a chiasm was, right? And so I was trying to figure out what's a chiasm and how do I identify one.
Mm-hmm.
And, come to find out, a lot of this is because of language. When you translate from either Hebrew or Greek into English, you lose a lot of the flow and the cadence and the symbolism and just the placement of words.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I come to find out, like this is a chiasm, I think, Psalm 23.
Mm-hmm.
And a chiasm kind of starts and it comes to a pinnacle, a point
Right.
that really is the central theme of the text and builds to and builds away.
Yep.
This verse 3 is the chiasm of this poem in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
It's for his name's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He leads us. He gives us what we need. He takes us to the green pasture. He provides the water.
Mm-hmm.
He takes us down the path of righteousness for his name's sake. And then he's gonna lead us through deep, dark valleys.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna prepare tables before us. He's gonna anoint our head with oil.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna lead us into eternity.
Mm-hmm.
But it is entirely for his name's sake.
Mm-hmm.
That's the central, point of that
Mhm.
chiasm. That's a beautiful
He,
thing.
he gives us the idea of like why he's the good shepherd in the first place, and like from verse 4 to the end, it's like since he is the great shepherd, like he is the good shepherd, we will fear no evil. We will we will go through the valley of the shadow of death. Because he is
Mm-hmm.
the good shepherd, and it has nothing to do with us, but it's for his name's sake.
What we say, the purpose statement: Christ Church exists to
Glorify
glorify
God.
God,
Mm-hmm.
right? By leading people to be fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. But it is existing to glorify God. That is the
Yes.
that is the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
So as our Hebrew friend led us to understand this end of verse 3, transition to verse 4, that we would call a pregnant pause.
Mm-hmm.
A pause with a sense of expectancy that great things are coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so verses 1 through 3, as we've noted, are written really to us, to the reader. It's David speaking to the reader, his proclamation of who he is in God. But here's where it changes at the end of this verse. For his name's sake leads to a pause, a Selah, a pause, and then a transition. And for the rest of this now, we're going to talk to God.
Mm-hmm.
From
We're
about
gonna-
to two.
We're going to pray.
Yeah,
basically.
and it's even a declaration of who God is. And
Yes.
so it's a reminding of the promises that David already knew.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying like I'm going to be confident in these things. I'm going to walk in these things because God, you said they're true. And so yeah, when I walk through the like
He even read
You-
it like
Mhm.
like he says it's to be read like a battle cry.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, it's a declaration.
everything's for his name's sake. Boom. Let's
Mhm.
walk through the valley. Let's prepare.
It
for
just
the
came
future.
to my mind is that idea of like the Maori, how they they
Mhm.
do that little like that dance. and
The
they
All
chant.
Blacks, the New
yeah,
Zealand
yeah.
rugby.
It's like
Yeah.
if you get to like verse 3,
Mhm.
and then at the end you can just imagine like God's people. Just like, yeah, exactly. Like let's do this. Especially once we get into the New Testament and we're known that Jesus only used the word church 3 times, right? And Paul used it, the majority of the time. But in the New Testament, we find that the gates of hell cannot withstand the church.
Mhm.
Where are the
because-
3? Can I put you on the spot?
Matthew 16, verse 17, and then Matthew 18, verse 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there. In Matthew 18, he actually says it twice.
Okay.
In Matthew 16, he says it once.
I'll build my church in gates of hell when I prevail against it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said basically, in the idea, is in Matthew 16, he says, your name is Peter, and upon this rock I'll build my church. And in Matthew 18, he says, hey, if someone is in sin, bring him before the church.
Yeah.
So in both of those, he's talking about the community, his community of people, not necessarily the organized, systematic church, but he's my community, my people are talking about it. And so, but yeah, I picture, as we understand that idea that we are in battle against darkness, so I think of that idea of I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Like you think of like two armies coming down into this dark battlefield, and you find God's people are yelling and chanting and following, and you can make a movie. Yeah.
Powerful image.
I think too that when we look at Psalm 23, it's used at like funerals and stuff like that, and it's meant for comfort, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the comfort only comes when we understand who God is,
Yes.
and what He really has in store for us. I don't want to get ahead of us in the scriptures and stuff, but like the idea of He, prepares a table in the presence of my enemies. Like you look at David's life, and I get to preach on that, and so I'm excited about that. But you just look at that, but then big picture, what the greatest enemy, sin, death,
Right.
and so like, yeah, this is an incredible psalm that we can take refuge in and have that comfort when we truly understand how good our God is.
And what's cool about that too is like we normally read Psalm 23 at funerals. Like whenever we hear Psalm 23 or you memorize Psalm, it's because of being at the funeral, which is great because it's a comforting psalm. He puts salve on our wounds and that sort of thing. But it really is like it's a daily type of a remembering of like, okay, I can face today. I can go, especially in the world we live in today, all of the uncertainties and everything that face us, but understanding who God is and what He's done, and like what you said, what He will do. It really is. Not only do we have comfort, but we have comfort in understanding that those things are true.
One last thing I wanted to come to before we wrap up is, and we don't need to go back through, as you presented in the message, the breakdown of the word from Hebrew, but righteousness. You defined righteousness in a way that I don't think I'd ever heard articulated when you broke down those three pieces. The summary definition would be righteousness is basically it's the hunt after the heart of the least. What I see it is, it's the hunt after the hearts of people that don't know Jesus. So it's very missional.
Very.
So He leads us in paths of righteousness. He leads us to hunt for the hearts of the least and left out.
That's right.
The lost sheep.
That's exactly right.
For His glory.
Yes.
So that He seeks them to be found for His glory, man. That's rich.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So I'd never heard that with righteousness. The hunt for the least. That's powerful. Dr. Shove, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for
my
being
pleasure.
with us. Thank you for sharing with us at Christ Church. We appreciate you.
I love every opportunity. So thank
Maybe
you.
you bring some content. We're appreciative of that. Thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us on the ReThink podcast, Psalm chapter 23, verse 3.